Hey everyone, I'm Andy. Welcome to my flower shop. I'm ready for spring. And welcome to Furniture Fables. In the world of design, it is so much fun to come across something that is just totally unexpected, a complete surprise. And while a sweetly harmonic redesign is often the way to go in furniture flipping, sometimes this furniture fabler gets a somewhat discordant idea stuck in her mind, and then, well, it's time, folks, to go gloriously against the grain. Today's fable begins with this beautifully designed, perfectly proportioned, double-level, mid-20th century modern side table that was given to me by my friend and fabulous theater costumer, Judy. I believe she had a neighbor who was getting rid of it, and so she scooped it for me and gave it to me at a rehearsal for Mamma Mia. You could see that it had these cool textured sides as well as some of that texture on the lower level and very lovely lines, but these tables with their dark laminate tops always conjure images of smoke-filled offices and women fetching coffee and, nonsense like that. And so I knew that I really wanted to do something bold and daring and different with this little friend and help catapult her into the here and now. I began with a good cleaning, spraying the piece with some simple green and using my sponge daddy to scrub off those years of grime. Hello. Ooh. Ugh. You can see I'm not afraid to get that texture wet, and I'm making sure to wash the entire piece, including the underside. I gave the table the very thorough rinse that I am known for, and then once it had dried completely, I decided to go ahead and prime it with some clear shellac. I knew that I wanted to use a darker paint color with this table, and so I didn't really need to prime the piece white, but especially because of that very slippery laminate, I needed to apply something that my paint could really grip onto, and I knew this shellac would do the trick. For consistency, I used it all over the entire piece. Then I brought the little table into our partly demoed bathroom because we had had another little cold snap. Okay, so now I must give you a little bit of backstory. Anyone who knows me well knows that I have a teeny tiny vintage dish interest. My husband might say obsession or problem. And I have always had a specific interest in chintz, or all over floral print pattern dishes. Growing up in the 80s, I of course had one of these, a Laura Ashley dress. Remember those? But just as it has for hundreds of years, chintz goes in and out of fashion. And actually right now, I think it's kind of back in. This summer, I picked out this little vintage piece. I loved its bright, clear colors. But as soon as I got it home and unpacked it, it was accidentally on purpose pushed off the table by a somewhat disgruntled kitty who was not at all pleased that we had had the nerve to go on vacation for a whole week and a half, leaving her at home with only 2 visits a day from the kitty sitter. I mean, really, how dare we? I mean, the nerve. Some people have it so hard. Well, even in its very sad state, I was still inspired by this little piece and decided to use it as a muse and see if I had the guts, the willpower, and just the right amount of crazy to bring an all-over chintz pattern to this traditionally dark brown, very serious side table. You can see how its blue background has some variation, and so I grabbed a few blues, ultimately deciding to do the base layer in this very saturated darker blue, covering the entire piece with it. By the way, if you'd like to know the exact colors that I used for this project, they will all be listed in the description box. I did 2 coats and then I let that dry completely. And then I grabbed this lighter, very vibrant shade of blue, and using a sponge applicator, I stippled this lighter color over that dark base color. Okay, so once I had that base done, here you can see the effect that I created. I think it looked pretty good. There you can see it compared to the background of our little ceramic piece. Then I busted out my floral colors. Oh, this is going to be a lot of fun. Okay, so essentially I needed 4 colors: green, orange, yellow, and pink. But you can see I decided to have 2 shades of each of those on hand. So yes, I have 8 colors. In each of these paints, I placed a wooden tongue depressor. I get those in bulk because I feel like they are just the perfect size stir sticks for a pint of paint. And I made sure I had plenty of inexpensive, smaller artist brushes. I also made sure I had my water mister and some rags on hand. So here is the star of our show, this little 6x6 floral stencil. I decided to use a little Gorilla Spray adhesive. You just spray it on to the back of your stencil and you let it dry for about 2 to 3 minutes, and it'll kind of tack up and get nice and sticky. And this really helps to keep your stencil in place as you work and prevent bleed through. I placed the stencil in the corner, overlapping the edges of that top section, and set my little chintz muse remnant right next to that to help me as I work. And then I began my stenciling journey. A journey of 1,000 stencils begins with the painting of one blossom. If I may paraphrase that famous Chinese proverb. And yes, there probably are maybe not 1,000 blossoms. Well, maybe 1,000, maybe at least a few hundred. Now, I knew as I worked on this first application that I was going to be playing a bit with the color balance, especially with that yellow. I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep that, but I knew that I could always go back and re-stencil any parts I wasn't happy with by just literally going over them. I decided to do those little mini flowers in that deep, darker orange. And then I did a second coat of pink on those blossoms. And then I used my lighter pink to come through and add some dimension to those blossoms. I decided I wanted to play around with some of the coral as well. I wasn't sure exactly where I wanted it to end up, but I knew I really, really wanted to work it in there. Then I used a really skinny little brush to just kind of lightly feather in some of that lighter green onto those darker green leaves. On this first stencil, I went ahead and added the yellow centers to those little mini orange flowers. And then I used the brush I had used to put the dark green down to kind of blend in those two greens together. I added some coral to those little buds.
Look at it! Oh my god! Oh, gasp.
Yep, I was pretty happy with that effect. I could see that my coloring was not going to look the same as my inspiration piece. Obviously, way less blue was coming through on the table than on the dish, right? The stencil I'm using is a much tighter stencil than the pattern that is on that ceramic piece. So on that ceramic piece, we're getting a lot more blue coming through. And even with that layer of stippled lighter blue paint, the blue was reading deeper than on the dish. But that was really okay with me. Overall, I felt really good about my colors because they were balancing each other pretty well. And eventually I decided to not do any of the larger blossoms in yellow. I felt like that might push the pattern over the top and possibly have it read a little bit too sweet or too juvenile. And so you'll see how I went back and fixed those yellow flowers a little bit later on. When I moved on to the lower level horizontal table surface, I decided to work from my little tongue depressor sticks. They worked really, really well. And I was able, of course, to just keep the caps right on my paint so they didn't get dried out. Every once in a while, I used my water mister to just gently mist over the top of those sticks. That helped keep the paint wet enough. And it actually worked really, really well. I also continually misted my brushes because you can see doing work like this, there was a lot of back and forth, using a bit of this color and then this color and then this color. And so brushes had to just kind of sit for a while. Now, you, of course, could have a glass of water that you put your brushes right into. But honestly, I had so much ground to cover that I didn't want my brushes to be constantly completely wet and be dealing with that. And I found that that mister bottle really did the trick. It kept them just damp enough so that they didn't dry out, but they weren't sopping wet. So my very, very first stencil took me about 10 minutes, but once I kind of got into a rhythm and knew what I liked and knew exactly kind of how I wanted to do it, I was able to complete a stencil in about 5 to 6 minutes. But yeah, still not speedy work, but I will tell you that it was pretty joyous work. If it is cold where you are, if it is dark, icy, snowy, wet, might I suggest you pick out some forgotten, forlorn, smaller piece of furniture and find a little corner of your home and just cover it in flowers. If you don't have a YouTube deadline, I mean, take all the time you want. You could take weeks and weeks to finish a project like this, just doing a little bit here, a little bit there. Every time I lifted that stencil, every time I felt happy. It was like buying myself bouquet after bouquet of flowers. Sometimes when you do work like this in your half-demoed bathroom, you have to dramatically stretch through this awkward opening because you, for various reasons, can't flip the table around and get to it from the other side, but it makes for a fun shot. Yay, it's looking good. Okay, time to go back over those yellow flowers on the top level of the table. You can see all I have to do is just line up that stencil carefully. I actually needed to do 2 coats of pink to get them to the right shade. And when I was done with that little fix, I brought the stencil down to the lower side bar. You didn't think we were done, did you? Oh, friends, it was tempting. It was tempting to stop with those 2 levels and those side pieces. But I really wanted to stay true to my vision. So on I went on my epic stenciling journey. I actually found it easier to put the table onto the floor on its side so that I could do this section cleanly. Then I brought the stencil around and I applied it to the frame of that lower shelf. Here you can see how working with a smaller stencil can be an asset. It's great when you have a big one that you can just lay down and you don't have to keep picking up and you can cover a lot of ground. But when you have a smaller stencil like this, you are able to really bend it to your will. I was able to bend it over the top of these sidebars so that I could have that pattern cleanly continue up and over and around them. Okay, now we must be done, right? Bwahaha. Nope. I don't know why I'm laughing. I'm the one doing this. I'm the one on this crazy journey. Yes, friends, it is time for the legs. Now, even with the stencil being as flexible as it is, we are not going to get as perfect and clean a result as we would on a flat surface, and I am definitely not going to worry about shading on the legs, at least not very much. But we can absolutely get a clear enough pattern to achieve our chintzy dreams. I placed the table on the end of the desk so that I could wrap the stencil around the very ends of those long modern legs, because we will leave no surface uncovered, friends. Well, actually, that's not true. It was about this time that I did decide to leave that lower textured shelf in that solid blue, just a hint of relief for the eyes. Okay, it was finally time to go back over the entire piece and add the little yellow centers to all of the little orange flowers. This was actually a ton of fun, kind of like doing a picture search when you were a kid. You gotta find all of them. Gotta find all of those orange flowers. The effect it gave was amazing. It was like turning on the fairy lights in a garden. Everything just started to glow. Okay, final steps. I came back in with some dark blue paint and did some touch-ups on the underside of those tabletops. And then I flipped the table on its side so that I could clean up the bottom. I like to follow the neat and tidy rule. Obviously, the underside of your piece is not going to be seen once it's in use. However, when you go to sell your piece and it gets lifted up to go into someone's car, or if it were to arrive after shipping and someone unpacks it, I just really don't like the idea of that customer seeing a sloppy underside, especially after all this work. Then I went back in with some pink and I added centers to any pink blossoms that were missing them. Okay, finally, time to get out that top coat. I decided to go with a glossy finish. I felt like that would reference our high gloss ceramic in kind of a cool way. So I am using a sponge brush that I've dampened just a little bit. When you apply a polyurethane top coat, you want to lay it down relatively quickly because it will dry quickly. You want to try not to go over what you've already brushed or wiped on, and you want to make sure you're going over that wet edge, that last edge of what you had laid down, so that you connect the applications. Before I applied the second coat, I decided to do a light sand with a fine sanding pad. This is a great way to knock back any little raised bits. And because that first layer of top coat was down, I was a lot less worried about busting through my stencil. I wiped back the sanding dust and then I applied my second coat. I think I'll actually do maybe 2 more coats of top coat, but I think this little side table is ready for her glamour shots. Okay, do you remember this once upon a time modern, but now meh, side table? With all the right lines, but a dated finish that sat stuck in the dark of winter? Well, here she is. Now. Move over, madmen. It is a new day, and Floral Riot is here. Cheerful, joyful, cheeky, irreverent, fun, unapologetically happy, our little side table seems to have triumphed in this clash of the design titans. Her 20th century mod silhouette is the perfect balance to her vintage English chintz-inspired pattern. As those two seemingly disparate styles wrap around one another, they give our eye that deliciously elusive note of design tension that somehow just works. And look, some kind gentleman found the superglue and restored my muse. This little table took a whole lot of effort, but I feel she was absolutely worth it. You just can't help but smile when you walk by her, and I swear she grins right back at you. So how much did my Floral Riot cost me? Well, that table, of course, was free. Thanks again, Judy and Judy's neighbor. The hardest working stencil in the valley was $7. Soap, primer, wooden stir sticks, paper plates, sponge brush, spray glue, and top coat, probably about $15 for all of that. And then the paint, which for me was about $15, bringing my total cost to $37. So let's get down to brass tacks, as they say. What will I sell this little rebel for? Well, first, let me say this. I know that this table is not for everyone. In fact, this table is probably not for most people. Having said that, I want to state clearly and for the record, I stand by this work 100%. This table is awesome. It is fabulous. I absolutely love it. I love it. Just needed to say that. Here's the cool thing about this, in my opinion. Of course, this is just my opinion. It is not cutesy. It's not itty boo. And it's because it's not a table with a floral border or a little bow over here. That all over chintz inspired pattern, it makes it turn a corner design wise, and it goes from what could look very kind of cutesy or even juvenile into something that holds the room. It holds some power design wise. It's cool. It's cool. It's cool. I'm just saying, I think it's cool. This is my opinion, not everybody will agree. I completely understand that. You can tell me what you think. Be kind. Be nice about it, but yeah. Well, anyway, okay. So after spending approximately, and yes, I clocked it all in here, friends, approximately 12 hours stenciling, 12 hours stenciling, just the stenciling. And I can still feel it. Yep, there it is. There's that stenciling right there. I found myself thinking that perhaps this little floral riot might be the perfect candidate to kick off an Etsy store. I find myself more and more getting interested in trying to create special pieces that are a little different, quirky, one-of-a-kind pieces, things that would be really well suited for an Etsy store. And so I am kind of considering doing that. If I decide to jump in and give that a try, I of course will let you know. I'll share with you all about it, how it goes for me and what I think about it. So maybe I will save this little table and list it there if I do that. As far as the price, I will probably do some more research. It is a side table. It does not have a mate. It's all on its own. I understand that could make it a little tricky to sell, but all of that said, the price is not gonna be cheap, friends. I think it's gonna be up there. I think it's gonna be up there somewhere. We'll see. And that wouldn't include shipping. Come follow me on Instagram. And you know, it's a good way to keep up to date on these kind of things. I hope you enjoyed this raucous and wild, against the grain journey. If so, please make sure to click that thumbs up button. And yes, please let me know what you thought. Is it fabulous? Or is it odd? Just be kind. That's all I ask. Just let's be kind. Let's be kind to one another. And make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future Fables fun. Thank you so much for joining me, my friends. I will see you next time for more Furniture Fables.